the meeting is perfect. Am I sharing or not? I think I am. So I hope I am. So I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar. It's June 29, 2021. It's 3 p.m. Eastern. It's time for us to start. We have two presenters, and I'm going to introduce them both. We will first have a short announcement from Andrew Sosanya, who is a policy analyst at Day One Project. And then we're going to have a longer presentation that was rescheduled from last time by Christopher Bishop, who is MC at IQT and also Chief Reinvention Officer at Improvising Careers and a TEDx speaker. So I'm going to let Andrew take over, I guess.
Can I share my screen? Okay. All right. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Upscaling quantum researchers, engineers. So hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Sosanya. I won't take too much of your time, but I'm a policy analyst at the Day One Project, a nonpartisan platform so I'm a policy analyst at the Day One Project, a nonpartisan platform to inform the administration's science and tech agenda with ambitious actionable policy ideas. And our goal is to treat the policymaker as a customer, meeting their demands, seeing what priorities they have and how we can truly help them implement good ideas. And so some of you may already be familiar with our work, but to those who aren't, we launched in January 2020 with the intent to give policymakers a running start by arming them with action-ready ideas on day one of the presidential term that just passed, or sorry, that just started. And so now over the last year and a half, we've been able to work with the science and tech community. So folks in government, folks in academia, folks in industry, to publish over 150 proposals on various topics like clean energy innovation, quantum AI. And so we've gotten smoke signals for policymakers currently want ideas on how to bolster the quantum workforce. And so that's where we come in. And so we are at an important moment. The quantum computing industry is very nascent. The National Science Foundation and the Department of Energy budget are likely to be boosted pretty soon. Both Congress and administration both recognize that quantum information science is a national security priority, and they recognize it as a core tenet of economic competitiveness. But the sad thing is that we don't necessarily have the quantum ready or quantum aware workforce to support it. Sure, I'm singing to the choir here, but and nor will we be able to pump out enough PhDs to meet the demand, because PhDs, along with a host of problems, take an upwards of 5 to 7 years to complete and are more targeted towards training researchers in careers in academia, but not in
social engineering is one certainly that we have to be aware of, because no matter how good our cyber.
Okay. Anyway, we need quantum aware and quantum adjacent people now. And so we've seen the smoke signals from policymakers. And that's why we're proposing that we pilot research-based master's programs in quantum information science across the nation to quickly upskill quantum researchers and engineers. And so these research-oriented master's programs differ from typical master's programs in that students would focus primarily on intensive research for 1 to 2 years, rather than focus primarily on coursework, completing coursework. And so with specialized knowledge of research experience, an influx of students trained in these programs would dramatically increase the pool of talent in areas of national need and strengthen the nation's innovation capacity and economic competitiveness. And so thank you all for giving me the time to talk to you today, because I really would love your insights on this idea, because the current limitations of this idea is that we truly don't know how so we want to embed, I guess first, we want to embed a strong industry connection. And so we're thinking about how exactly it would play out to embed internships into this program. And second, like how to, what the nature of involvement from the national lab should be. And third, how much coursework should we integrate into this program? Because the hypothesis is, for this policy proposal is that, for the most part, we want to shoot coursework, but, we are amenable to looking at how coursework can complement, even bolster the skill sets of students in these programs. But without having the programs be coursework focused. And this is also, I guess, this concern is also brought up by conversations I've been having with a bunch of folks in the quantum information science space about how you can't jump into most quantum research projects if you haven't studied especially if you haven't studied a hard science before. You can't just jump straight into it. And so having some sort of baseline knowledge is something we're looking into right now. And so we're building a more detailed proposal of this idea, with the help of folks within the quantum community. But I guess as I think I would welcome any thoughts and suggestions via email on how to improve this idea and how to further scope it. So I guess I didn't mention that this idea originated from us, but also in response to policymaker demand at NSF. And so we've been working with some colleagues at NSF on scoping this idea out. And this isn't the only quantum workforce idea that they're interested in. And I guess right here, they're also interested in creating 10 national quantum education centers with a baseline funding of 300 million over a period of 10 to 12 years. If any of you have, I guess, any interest in talking about that or any suggestions or questions, feel free to send me an email at andrew@dayoneproject.org. But for right now, I'll open up quickly for a question or two.
So you can type questions in the chat, or you can just speak up. If this is of great interest, we can reschedule. I mean, you can contact Andrew directly, but we can also schedule him again for a later date, like July 13 or maybe in August. Let's hear the questions.
So Andrew, I have a question. This looks really interesting. Sort of two parts. Is there a target sort of audience? Like where would the researchers go? And also, are there disciplines where you're looking for interns initially, right? Is it particle physicists or mechanical engineers, or have you parsed out what the demand might be where you could get some traction early on with the program?
So I guess the target for where these students would go after completing a program like this would be various quantum computing companies and startups. That is like the end goal, essentially, to fulfill the demand that is currently present in the industry right now, and will continue to grow as the quantum computing industry grows itself. Because we're seeing a lot of research and development funding thrown into the quantum computing industry. And so we expect there to be more demand. And so there needs to be a supply to meet that demand. And to your second question, do you mind repeating the second part of your question again?
No, just wondering if there are like specific sort of disciplines or focus areas where the initial set of researchers might be, what topics they might be engaged in. Is there have you parsed out a hierarchy of, let's start with, this skill set and then move to this, or?
So we're still currently scoping that out right now. Last week, I talked to Celia about the report that QED-C did on basically workforce needs across the industry. And so using the insights drawn from that report, we'll be able to design this program to I guess meet the demand where it's the demand at the subtopics where it's needed the most.
Cool. Thank you.
Anybody
Here's a
else?
question in the chat room. The question, if you can read it, is who are you working with at NSF?
So there are folks within the computer science the SciSce directorates, the MPS directorates, and folks who are looking at scoping out how exactly the new technology directorate will operate and how they're going to allocate funding towards that. For folks not aware, in the last couple months, there's been talk about expanding the NSF budget, and it looks very likely. The House just passed the bill last night, I believe, and so there is a lot more room for initiatives like this now, and so policymakers are looking for ideas on where to put the money, essentially.
Okay. Just knowing fully well, building on what Christopher just asked you, Andrew, I know the first mindset is what type of discipline and things like that will first of all come to mind. But if I'm drawing on the experience of the Army High Performance Computing, when they were creating some of those consortium or scenario, we had to create awareness and also research to empower some of the young ones. Consortium was formed just the one that I'm familiar with was with University of Minnesota. Then we have Howard, we have Clark Atlanta University, Jackson State, and Florida. And then through that consortium, multidisciplinary group were formed where for the warfighters in terms of specific parallel computing type of problem we are focused on. And for the 10 or 15 years, I know for sure that the military or the army were able to get very novel type of solutions. But that was a concerted effort in terms of building up the infrastructure. Based on it, SP machine, Cray computer, things were provided in terms of infrastructure, but you get results. So I'm saying and then later on it went to Stanford. If there are concerted efforts on this, any approach that is used, as long as there is critical infrastructure that goes along with it, I'm sure there will be results coming out of such an effort. That's just my own.
We will have to stop this discussion. That's clearly interesting because we need to move on to the second presenter. I'm going to collect everything that was written in the chat. And then I'm going to send them over to Andrew. I'm going to ask him if he can come back. I'd like to let Christopher Bishop now start his presentation.
Hey, Andrew, I just want to say this was great. Thank you so much. Can you put your email in the chat just so everybody has it?
Doing it right now.
Great. Yeah, maybe in your LinkedIn profile URL, that'd be cool. All right, so I'm going to take the helm here, right? You guys cool with that? So let me share my screen. All right, here we go. Can you see that? This is actually actually Teal Fellowship graduates. Lawrence, you'll appreciate that. So I'm Christopher Bishop. I'm a former IBMer. I'm a TEDx speaker. I have a LinkedIn Learning course I'm going to reference at some point. And I'm the Master of Ceremonies at Inside Quantum Technology, our 4-day virtual event. We're doing it again in November, by the way, a little plug. November 1, we start again. So for those of you who haven't joined us, please try to attend in the fall. What I've done is I put together a deck that I hope will entice high school students and or maybe college students to get interested in quantum jobs, the quantum workforce, right? So I'd like to go through it and then certainly welcome feedback at the end, especially from educators who might be interacting with this cohort, right, with this demographic, to give me a sense of whether you think this will resonate. I tried to cut a broad swath. I tried to make it interesting and appealing, not too granular, just a disclaimer up front, it's not speeds and feeds, as we used to say at IBM. But I'm hoping it's something that would get kids, high school kids, interested and excited and not intimidated by the idea of quantum information science. So that's my disclaimer up front, right? Okay. So I put it together in 4 sort of categories. I want to provide some social historical perspective. I want to talk about the amazing potential impact, because I think that's interesting to kids. I want to talk about the range of opportunities, cutting a broader swath than just particle physicists, with all due respect, but showing the ancillary and adjacent disciplines that are needed to drive awareness and adoption of this technology. And then I have something called a future career toolkit that I put together based on my own nonlinear multimodal career. Sidebar, I've had 8 careers so far, from touring rock musician to working at IBM corporate headquarters at the IBM Foundation. So anyway, the concept of work, right? So work and workforce, let's start sort of at the beginning, if you will. It's been constantly reinvented since the days when we were hunters and gatherers, right? And whoever had the sharpest spear or was strong enough to drag the killed animal back to the cave, those are the kinds of technologies that we were using hundreds of thousands, if not a million years ago. So always driven by technology, the idea of work. And it's part of a process that's been going on for literally thousands of years. So here's a cobot and a carbon-based life form, human being, collaborating, working with yet another technology, the technology that we're all familiar with in the early 21st century. When I do this, I do a version of this called How to Succeed at Jobs That Don't Exist Yet for college students. I put in this slide. It's sort of the pop quiz, if you will, and asking if there are any history buffs in the audience. And I read this quote and ask them to identify who said it and about what and when. So I refuse to issue a patent for fear it will put my poor subjects out of work. Any history buffs? Anyone want to propose an answer in the chat or shout it out? Who you think might have said this? Any ideas? Anybody into history of economics or technology? No, Margaret, you're speaking, Margaret, but I can't hear you. You're on mute. All right, so I'm gonna. Any guesses? I don't see anything in the chat. Anyway, so the person who said it, poor subjects, gives it away, right? It was a monarch. This is Queen Elizabeth I. And she said this about a mechanized knitting machine, refused to put her, allow this new technology to be incorporated. And she said it in 1589. So like 430 odd years ago. So some people today might say the same thing about, say, AI or robotics. Sorry, somebody speaking? Anyway, so this is, again, for socio-historical perspective, right? Conversations about technology disrupting workforce models has been going on for a long time. This is more in the weeds, but for those of you who are into more detail, this is a terrific book called Technological Revolutions in Financial Capital by Carlota Perez. She's a Venezuelan economist. She teaches at Cambridge. She has some cool YouTube videos, but the book talks about 5 cycles of innovation and then some kind of crash or reconciliation and then adoption and standardization. So she starts with the Industrial Revolution. So this is 200 odd years past the Queen Elizabeth quote, but talks about things like age of steam and railways and steel electricity. One of my favorites is age of oil and automobiles. So in 1908, when Henry Ford started rolling Model Ts off the assembly line in Detroit, farriers and blacksmiths got very nervous and had to figure out what to do next. Again, quantum sort of falls in this context as a disruptive technology, right? It's a great book, by the way. I highly recommend it. Let's move to computers, right? So that's the general topic around quantum. So mechanical devices, the beginning of machines that could do calculations, the difference engine, Charles Babbage in London in the mid 19th century. Then vacuum tubes, transformed how we do math and calculations. I mean, the first computers, ENIAC and the Bomb and Colossus, all based on reams and reams of vacuum tubes. Then transistors transformed how we calculate and do math and leverage technology. So leading to the integrated circuit, which is in everything we have today, right? It's in our phones, it's in our cars, it's in our appliances. And quantum represents sort of the next conversation around technology, computer technology being incorporated into our everyday lives. Well, someone's asking the name of the book and the author. So the book is Technological Revolutions in Financial Capital. And the author is Carlotta Perez. So yeah, it's really interesting. She's brilliant. I think it's fair to, pull up a quote by Robert Souter, whom we all know and admire. He's the chief quantum exponent at IBM Research. He says, point in time view, that many industries are currently working with quantum computing, including banking, capital markets, insurance, automotive, aerospace, and energy. In years to come, the breadth and depth of the industries leveraging quantum will continue to grow. Again, to level set for high school students around, this is nascent, but it's happening and it's growing and getting a lot of focus. To Andrew's point, there's a lot of funding being allocated to move quantum information science forward. So this is from an interview in Tech Republic that Bob did last year. I think it's worth mentioning the concept of quantum supremacy, again, to get their attention. This is me talking, through the third wall, if you will. September 2019, Google's Sycamore computer performed a calculation in 200 seconds that a classical computer would require 10,000 years to complete. Now, between all of us, we know IBM said that their Summit probably could have done it in 2.5 days, but it's worth noting that this is a new concept, right? Quantum supremacy, carrying out calculations that are impossible for a classical computer. So what are the implications of something like this for problems that we solve every day and problems that are so hard we don't even really talk about them? So problems that, we solve using, high performance computing or everyday classical computers, are pretty remarkable. And we apply that technology and that calculation capability to lots of, current settings and get great results. I mean, we developed a vaccine in 6 months, certainly using high performance computing. But then there are problems that are so hard, we don't really even bother talking about them or how we might solve them, because they're too complex. We don't have the computational power. It's too much data to manipulate. So let me give you some examples. Again, sidebar, trying to get high school kids' attention, right? So optimization, traveling salesman problem is one that's been around for years, first formulated in 1930. The idea is, what's the best route for a traveling salesman to visit 15 cities in the most efficient way? So 15 cities is like 43 trillion options, right? Possible routes. As soon as you add 5 more cities, you're now at like quadrillion, 120 quadrillion possible routes. So imagine if a quantum computer could solve these kinds of problems, the implications for logistics for companies like Merck or even DHL. Certainly manufacturing could be transformed, and transportation. How do you route trucks and buses and autonomous drones using quantum computing capabilities? Another area where this could have impact, so we can get this to move, drug discovery. So currently, it's very hard to model complex molecules using classical computers. You reach sort of a point beyond which you can't really accurately or efficiently determine what complex molecules might look like. But with quantum, you could conceivably do it, and the implications are develop cures for cancer, maybe, address genetic diseases, certainly cure Alzheimer's, maybe accelerate the process for developing a vaccine for the next pandemic, which we know is coming at some point, right? Other applications, come on, behave. Oh, here we go. Finance. So Will Zhang, I think we all know, is leading the quantum research at Goldman Sachs. They're very interested in how you might apply quantum for portfolio optimization, or developing investment strategies for clients, or being able to render much more complex Monte Carlo simulations to make predictive recommendations about how the markets are going to trend or where there's opportunity for investment. So if you're interested in that, that's an area where quantum is going to be applicable. Communication, favorite of mine. So this is a screen grab from David Ashalom, University of Chicago. This is an example of the early quantum network that they're developing. So the implications are quantum communication could provide a secure, fast, and immutable way to share information. Implications for verticals are around finance, healthcare, legal, any other organization that wants to create and share information quickly and securely and safely, right? Another application. Okay. And something as simple as predicting the weather. So currently, you can get a prediction like what the weather's going to be like tomorrow pretty accurately. Next 3 days, maybe 80%. 7 to 10 days, maybe 75%. Imagine if you could predict the weather next year. So in theory, quantum computing capabilities could deliver that kind of data. Implications for agriculture, the big drought going on out west. Imagine if they had some insight into that before they're out there pulling plants up that are dying. Implications for transportation, for manufacturing, lots of other ways that predicting the weather could impact how we live and work. IBM bought the Weather Channel, early indicator, right, of the power of weather management. So those are some, what I think are exciting ways to apply quantum to get people interested in it. So how could today's learners contribute? There are lots of different ways. I put this slide together to indicate, what the implications are for how you take a new technology and drive it into the culture and the business, if you will. So these are, some ads from the 40s and 50s around personal computers, corporate computers, hard disks. This is sort of the state of technology around computers in the 50s. Some of these brands are gone, right? I don't think anyone's seen a Royal McBee computer anytime recently. I love the ad with Isaac Asimov pitching Radio Shack computers. Get an out of this world deal on my favorite color computer. The idea is someone had to craft messaging around the value of this technology, right? That's the meta message of these screen grabs. So, and what's the business value? The guy in the upper left, right, with his sleeves rolled up, says that Microsoft Multiplan allows me to explore more alternatives in less time. I think it leads to better management decisions. So somebody conjured that, put that copy together, built this ad, wrote these articles, and we're going to be seeing the same kind of challenges around quantum. So the segue is that there are lots of ways to participate in the evolving quantum workforce ecosystem. This is the key slide. I want to spend a moment on this. So certainly at the core of it are scientists, right, and researchers, as Andrew was saying. I mean, people are developing the technologies that deliver this value. But that said, there's a lot of adjacent skill sets that are needed to drive understanding and adoption of quantum information science. So certainly executives, if you've got a company, somebody's got to found it, somebody's got to run it. Startup founders are key. A group of C-suite leadership team members is going to be essential to driving a successful company around quantum, right? And then strategy consulting, it's on the upper left. So McKinsey and Accenture already have practice areas that are giving clients guidance around how to take advantage of quantum in their business models. Investing, as I mentioned, Will Zhang at Goldman and many other banks are putting together desks that provide guidance around how to take advantage of and get some exposure to quantum related companies. Marketing and branding. One of my favorite examples is Catherine Londergan she's the chief marketing officer at Zapata. So she came from a general advertising agency. I think she had Apple as an account before, but became intrigued with quantum and is now running the marketing for that organization. Comms and PR. Again, somebody's got to write about this. Somebody's got to describe what it is in terms that not only lay people can understand, but business people, again, with a P&L and a bogey, so they can, understand why that's important up to sales. And these are just random examples that I've picked. There's no sort of implied hierarchy or value to any of these, but just to give you some examples. So again, biz dev, upper right, somebody's got to sell this stuff to somebody with a checkbook, right? That's the bottom line. People have to be able to demonstrate what the business value is. And certainly it's evolving, as we all know, but again, people who find that interesting or fascinating or have proclivities in that area, quantum is a possible area to explore. UX design, right? User-centered design, human-computer experience. Someone's got to figure out how to make people be able to easily interact with this new technology. Education, one near and dear to my heart, right? The profession that enables all other professions. So hats off to the people like Terrell Franz and other members of the education community that are leading the charge around putting together programs and curriculum and courseware to educate the quantum workforce, right, across a range of disciplines. And that's certainly regulatory and policy, and not to demean it, because that's where a lot of the money is coming from, right? They're funding QED-C, as it were. But, you know, policy, how are we going to control this? How are we going to regulate it and manage it? What are people going to be allowed to do, or what represents risk? How do we put together protocols that protect people and clearly indicate how we can use quantum most effectively? And then optics and photonics. I always quote Robert from the Optical Society saying, picks and shovels, right? Levi Strauss is the one who made the money from the California gold rush. So companies building lasers. We saw that terrific webinar a few weeks ago where the laser vendors, partners were talking about their tools. Fantastic. You know, somebody's got to build test beds. There's a lot of additional equipment to loosen refrigerators, wiring harnesses, on and on. So this is sort of a picture of what this workforce is going to look like as it evolves. So the Future Career Toolkit is something I put together. In the spirit of full disclosure, it's part of a LinkedIn Learning course I have called Future Proofing Your Data Science Career. It's something that I take university students through when I do this at schools. But I think it's apropos here, and I've recast it to provide guidance for people interested in the quantum space, to give them some ideas about how to navigate into this world, if you will. So it's 3 tools are voice, antenna, and mesh. Voice is defining your own focus, your own brand, if you will. Antenna is a tool to find relevant conversations. And then mesh is building what I call a mega network. So finding people and connecting to them and to organizations that share your interests. So let me take you through this quickly. The future career tool number 1 is voice, right? Defining your focus. So assuming you're interested in exploring quantum, you want to get some sense of what it is you do well or have expertise in, or would like to explore. So here's an example. You know, maybe you're into communications, and the skill required would be, say, writing and branding guidance, or marketing, writing copy, or it could be quantum machine learning. Maybe you want to focus on solutions that are leveraging AI in the quantum space, right? So keeping in mind also that your voice is going to change and evolve over your work life. So you may start out even as a researcher and end up in biz dev, or start out as a comms person and start a company and be an executive, be a CEO of a company that you founded. So the idea is voice, finding your voice. Once you've put that together, the idea is to look for sources. Where are conversations going on around these topic areas, right? And pick a range of sources, different media channels. It could be elite newspapers. It could be TikTok. Wherever this information is being shared, where conversations are going on, where thought leaders are sharing information about where this is heading, check it out, sign up, get Google alerts or whatever. So here's an example. So say you're into communications. I mentioned Zapata. They have a robust set of PR kind of materials on their website. I would encourage you, if you're interested in communications around quantum, to check their website every week. They have new content, case studies, press releases. Certainly IBM Research, I mean, they have a rich catalog of material that they published deep with use cases around real world applications, as well as insight into the research that they're doing around quantum and quantum information science. So maybe you're into quantum machine learning. A couple of possible sources would be the Google Quantum AI website. Maybe check there every couple of weeks. Again, put some frequency, some longitudinal parameters around it, so it becomes more of a discipline, right? So I'm going to check the Quantum AI site every couple of weeks to see what's there. Just discovered a quantum club on Clubhouse. I don't know if any of you are using that. I would bet some of these high school students might be. Check it periodically. Actually, if you sign up for Clubhouse, they'll give you prompts when conversations around groups or clubs that you're in are being conducted. So again, this is just a sampling. There are a range of options. The good news is there are lots of sources of information around quantum information science. The bad news is there are lots of information sources around quantum information science. So parsing and rationalizing are the key based on the drivers around your voice. The third tool is what I call mesh. So using the voice criteria and informed by the antenna findings, I encourage people to look on LinkedIn. Now, again, sidebar, I'm not sure how many high school kids have LinkedIn profiles, hopefully more than not, but certainly college kids or early career audience members would have LinkedIn. So I encourage them to pick 1 to 3 people to connect with, put in Boolean parameters, maybe it's Google plus communication plus Silicon Valley or whatever, and see what pops up. Find people who share your interest, connect with them. Also find one group to join based on your topic. So here's some examples, again, just random. So communications, again, I mentioned Catherine at Zapata. Reach for her on LinkedIn and or any of her lieutenants, members of her team. So she's aware of you and you're on her radar. If you're into quantum machine learning, this gentleman, Dr. Verdun, is at Alphabet, and he's the quantum ML research scientist. So again, someone you might reach for, try to connect with, and or see who he or she is connected to. Again, do the Twitter math, right? Once you're connected, see who else they know, who they think is important, who they think is saying interesting stuff, writing interesting commentary. And then in terms of groups, join a group. Try to find at least 1 or 2 based on your area of interest. So communications, there's a Springer Quantum Machine Intelligence group, a LinkedIn group that you could join, and looks like the conversations are interesting. I always say go for the ones that have a lot of members, and it's okay to lurk, watch what people are saying, look at the conversations. And then if you have something interesting to say or feel like you could add value, weigh in, post a comment, or even post a topic, start a conversation. Quantum machine learning, same kind of thing. There are numerous groups. This is just one example, quantum computing and machine learning. It's a group on LinkedIn. And I think it has 627 members or something. Again, look for large numbers. Also look for groups that have thought leaders in the groups. Ideally, they'd either host them or are members. So that's the idea, right? And the net is, in summary, you pick an area of discipline that interests you in the quantum space, find the quantum conversations, who's talking about what in your area of interest, and then connect with the major players or the organizations, either through individual connections with people or by joining groups. And the idea is once you're on their radar, you'll have an opportunity to get a job that doesn't exist yet, right? When they're looking for resources, their team expands or a new organization gets initiated or something shifts, and they say, yeah, who is that person that we spoke to that sent me a LinkedIn request about whatever? That person probably would be perfect. Or someone in their network needs someone with your skills, right? So that's the idea. It's a numbers game, right? Getting on the peripheral radar. I would ask these people for a 30-minute informational interview if they look interesting enough and try to have a conversation with them, right? So that's the Future Career Toolkit. These organizations need your talent. And this is just a random sampling, point in time view again, but this is the range of activity that's going on in the quantum information science space. And it's only a sampling, right? But major players, certainly on the lower left, IBM and Google and Alibaba, enabling technologies here on the upper left, applications and consulting, and then they break down by sort of vertical and industry, if you will, they're consulting. So lots of options for you, this is high school audience, to get involved in quantum information science. So I would say I'll see you in the quantum enabled future. So that's the main presentation. I also wanted to share just I have a little appendix I put together based on screen grabs I got from various events, including Women in Quantum. Shout out to Denise Ruffner. But these are real world examples of jobs that are available at some of the companies that I mentioned earlier in the deck. So research, certainly software, hardware, it's a whole long list, right? Again, a point in time view. Here's some jobs at Google, quantum AI. Certainly hardware engineers, software engineering, but product managers, implications around project manager, operations kind of people as well. Another example is this is Amazon, right? So their bracket instantiation represents lots of opportunities, 50 current job openings, applied scientists, program managers, product marketing. So again, a range of disciplines. Career opportunities at QCware. So director of product management, director of marketing, back to the Catherine Lonergan example. They need people with skills in adjacent and ancillary disciplines to help drive understanding and adoption of this technology. And here's the final one, just Zurich. So they have, offices in multiple places. They're looking for all kinds of skills, certainly application scientists, technical sales in the lower right. So all just to reinforce my point about the fact that there are lots of opportunities in quantum that you can take advantage of. So that's my pitch. I'll stop there and stop sharing. How about that? And I welcome any comments or questions, feedback, input, share now or send me a note. But the idea is to try to get kids excited about doing different things in quantum, right? You don't have to be a particle physicist to contribute. And we need more than just particle physicists. So again, with all due respect. Comments, questions, feedback? Don't be shy. We're all friends here. Margaret, you look like you're speaking, but you're on mute. No? You're not speaking.
Wasn't speaking. It was a great, I'm reading some of the chat, great presentation. And I think the challenge is to get kids excited, and especially kids who are not necessarily connected with computer science or physics or fields that might lead to these careers. How do you introduce them? Math is often the barrier, as I'm sure everybody on this meeting knows. And how do you move them beyond that fear of mathematics to engage in the cool opportunities ahead?
Yeah, well, thank you. So my email address, I'll put it in the chat, chris@improvisingcareers.com. That's one of them anyway. Yep. For some reason it's all caps. I apologize. I'm not shouting. I'll undo the cap lock. Okay. So yeah, I'm thinking that members of this TAC, maybe we would take this and modify it or tweak it based on the audience. I mean, so maybe college students, it could be a little more technically focused. For middle school people, maybe even more simple. I find when I do these kind of pitches actually for younger kids, it's good to build it as a Prezi. So it's sort of cinematic and more entertaining because their attention span tends to be shorter, But
So
I'm
Chris,
open
this
to-
was wonderful. I just want to make a comment. Yesterday, I attended an APS teacher town hall on QIS.
Yeah,
So
I
this is
saw
all.
that.
You-
Your
you-
note about that looked really cool.
Yeah, and then the point was that this was organized by Quantum for All, Q12, and Q2 Work. And then on July 13, we're going to have Emily Edwards, who's part of the TAC, but can't be here right now, to come and talk about these initiatives. So your presentation is outstanding in the sense that this is how we should talk to kids. What they are putting together, one of the things that they were talking about is a quantum crossing. So they want to use a program called GatherTown, which is a game-like program. People sort of like Zoom, and they go in there, and in a map, you can just go towards various places, like Google has a booth, IBM has a booth, Zapata has a booth, and people, scientists, will be waiting there, and there will be a local focused Zoom session with those people. And that's how they could, we'll probably will hear more about this in July, but that's how kids 6 to 12th grade can interact and form an opinion that this is a viable career and what exactly it entails, and people are working and what they're doing. They have done this in March. That was a physics crossing for, a graduate school and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was very successful. So maybe we can combine your stuff with what they are doing, and they might just need what you just presented to us.
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of virtual worlds. So when I was at IBM, I was the actually comms director for the virtual universe community. And we built a lot of Second Life instantiations for big clients like Deutsche Bank and Circuit City. And I ran virtual culture events in Second Life for IBM. I was a concierge and a greeter at a IBM Academy of Technology event that we ran on virtual worlds in Second Life. It was pretty interesting. So GatherTown sounds really cool. I'm a fan of exploring those kinds of tools for sure.
Yeah, another thing I want to point out is that we have three directions in which we're working on a workforce. One is the immediate. All the companies want to retrain and reskill their workforce. I mean, we have to do this right away. Then there is the growing of a workforce, which is what Quantum for All wants to do. Let's teach. So quantum workforce is now in school, 6th to 12th grade. Let's start teaching them. Who's going to teach them though? The teachers. And the teachers are basically doing exactly what industry is supposed to do, retraining and reskilling. So that's why Quantum for All has a very difficult situation on their hands. They want to teach to grow the workforce, but at the same time, they have to retrain and reskill the teachers. And
Yeah. Somebody's talking. I could go on mute if you're not talking. Thank you. Bruce Kramer, can you put yourself on mute? Thank you.
So the part in the middle is placing the graduates. We're doing this with the NSF intern program. That's in the middle. So growing a workforce, placing the graduates, and then retraining and reskilling.
Yeah.
Companies are focused on retraining and reskilling. But if we only do that, then we're
gonna be
always going to do it just that.
Yeah, we're going to be 20 years behind like next week.
Yeah. So we have to start moving towards growing the workforce with what you showed us today, with what they are doing over there in the APS Quantum for All, Q2 work, Q12.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Thank you, Adrian. Yeah.
A couple questions with hands up.
Yeah, please. Someone mentioned Bob's book. Yep, Dancing with Qubits. He's got a new one coming out, like Dancing with Python, right?
Jack?
Jack.
So in terms of like, let's say introducing quantum computing to people my age, like I'm 18, early in my college career, like something when I was learning how to program from a very young age was that it was very easy for me to kind of apply it and see the result. So when I was in 6th grade and I'm drawing stuff to the screen on Khan Academy, I'm getting that excitement because it's something I produced.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest barrier when it comes to quantum computing, and I'm honestly not sure like how to really tackle this, is I'm very early in my quantum computing career as well, is kind of just finding things that a student could apply for themselves and get that rush.
Yeah.
And in a field where it's very abstract, where it's it's logistical optimization, it's Shor's algorithm, it's all these things that are either very far in the future or very complicated or require a big background in mathematics. I think that's the biggest barrier.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there are like sort of games you can play on the IBM cloud computers that allow you to put in algorithms or problems you can solve comparatively easily that deliver what you're describing, some kind of immediate results. So you can see the impact of manipulating qubits or running an algorithm on a quantum computer. But that's a great point for sure. How could we get some near term closer to immediate gratification so it's not too esoteric, right? No, that's a great point. Thank you, Jack. Olu, yes.
Yeah.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay, Chris, I just finished with some of the middle schoolers for one of Verizon Interactive Learning this past week. And the question came up as we were teaching them. They were doing gaming within code spaces, and they were using block coding. One of them just out of the blues just asked me, what of quantum computing? What is it all about?
And what did you say?
Immediately
What was your answer?
the 5 steps. The IBM put it out there to teach. This lady, her name just skipped me now. That 5-step where she had to explain to a low grader, the high school, and then the college, and then the super graduate student. That becomes very handy. As soon as I play that tape, they understand what it's all about. You just dovetail into some of the things you were just mentioning.
So thank you. Is that on like the IBM site somewhere?
Yeah, because when I took the quantum certification with the IBM Skill Academy,
Yeah.
That was one of our reference points. I will pull it up and probably.
Yeah,
put
if
it
you
in
can you
chat.
put the link in the chat? Oh, Lou, that would be great if you can dig it up, huh?
I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great.
Charles,
Yeah. Any tools
Charles,
like that, for sure.
sorry, Charles Robinson also just added a link in the chat saying
Okay.
IBM's a board game called Ganglion.
Cool. Thank you, Charles. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, if you just go Google IBM quantum games, you'll find a variety of things out there. We have a number of people that have done stuff in that area
Cool. Okay. Yeah, that's great.
from IBM Quantum.
Okay. Yeah. Again, making it accessible, right? That's the key.
There's a good video by Abe Asfaw.
Oh, yeah. Can you
From
put the
last year.
URL in the chat? Yeah, I'm a big fan of Abe. He's fantastic.
I think Charles already, yeah.
Um,
Charles already put a link in
Of
there.
is that the Abe Asfaw video you put
Yeah.
in?
Yeah, the YouTube, yeah.
Cool. Perfect.
Then there's James Wooden also, and I forget now.
Yeah. Any resources? Yeah. Put them in the chat for sure. But that's great. Yeah. Someone says there's a link to Ganglion board game. There's a cell phone game as well. Really, Charles? Cool. Whoop.
Has finally made an appearance.
Hey, Chris, I have a
Is that-
quick question.
Yeah.
So it seems like you've been presenting to a lot of high school students and people who are just getting into their careers. And, maybe one piece of feedback or comment on your presentation is that, maybe it's a strong word, but you almost vilify particle physicists. Like, you don't need to be a particle physicist to do quantum computing.
It's not my, first of all, I haven't presented, this is the first time I've ever shared this deck. So you're the first to see it. I haven't been presenting to high school students. And I certainly don't mean to vilify. So I just want to
that's
cut a
not the
broader
hard.
swath than just scientists is what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
Because I think
that's not
intimidating.
really my criticism. It's not
Okay.
my question is how do you balance the trying to be inclusive of everyone, of all disciplines, everybody doing quantum computing,
Yeah.
and then also giving that message of, well, anyone can go into STEM. It's anyone can be a science, technology, engineering, math professional or advocate. It's sort of that balance. I'm wondering how you're planning on balancing that message.
Well, I'm open to suggestions, Philip, if you have ideas. Again, my intention, as I said, is really to try to cut a broader swath, because I think, with all due respect, the particle physicists get the limelight and their chief marketing officer doesn't get any press. So if we're going to try and cut a broad swath and get quantum information science understood and adopted, we're going to need more than just scientists. So maybe, I'll be gentler with the message, but again, the idea is to have it be encouraging, not vilifying, not damning.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's not my specialty or area of specialization, but I think I've seen others say we have to be very inclusive in how we get people into these science and technology careers and education paths, and maybe others could say how to best form that message in me. I'm just trying, maybe observing a little bit of we should be encouraging people to become those quantum information
for sure.
physicists.
It's good feedback for sure. Yeah. It should be. Yeah, it's not like it's one or the other, right? It's like we need particle physicists and we need project managers and we need teachers and we need operations people. And so, no, it's a good point. Thank you, Philip. I'm writing the analog. Mechanical pencil on paper. How about that?
Yeah, Chris, I think the slides you had that showed the different types of positions is really important, because there's not as much awareness, especially amongst students, that those types of positions are available. The other practical reality, and you touched on this during your talk, was even if you go down the research scientist path, oh, by the way, you're going to end up spending your time being a project manager at some point, and various other things. And so helping people that are interested in the field have the realization that there are those types of career opportunities, and that, yes, if you want to go a research path, you really should study math and physics and get that understanding. But it's not the only path to get involved in the quantum industry.
Yeah. And implying, you may start out as like a optics person building, test beds and end up starting a company, or you might start out as a particle physicist and end up in biz dev because you are able to articulate the value and understand the technology behind it, kind of thing. I mean, I'm making it up, but that's the idea, right?
Mhm.
You don't stay in one thing, ideally, especially in the early 21st century. That model is gone. The days of working at IBM for 30 years, with all due respect to Charles and Bob Suter, I mean, that's not a model for kids today. So other comments, questions, input, feedback. How might we recast it? What could we tweak?
Christopher, just want to make a comment. I've
Please.
been doing actual projects. So, I had a number of high school students that I taught. This is a summer internship or summer enrichment programs with Harrisburg University. So we had a number of students that came in. We taught them quantum computing, annealing, gate computing, Shor's algorithm. One of the students actually built a quantum simulator. So what I realized at the end of that was there wasn't a second step after the teaching, because there's a lot of programs out there that are teaching quantum computing, but the students don't know what to do with it after that.
Yeah.
And there's a gap between working in quantum computing and being introduced to quantum computing. So what I have started with Harrisburg University is a project program where I've got actually 13 people involved in there right now. And we are actually teaching. So Shor's algorithm, reverse multiplication on D-Wave, we'll be working in quantum communication as well. And what I'm doing is I'm taking projects that I've already done and teaching the students how to work like in a real world research environment. And so learn quantum computing, but then deliver something, deliver a paper, deliver some code, deliver some unique ideas. And that's the only way people will really understand what they can do with quantum computing versus just, like maybe talking about it.
Yeah. So Alex, that sounds great. Can you send me some of that information? You work with Terrell.
Yeah, I can send you, I've got a slide deck of 5 different projects that we are conceptualizing. 2 I'm already working in. One is proposed as part of the INQ credits. So if you get the credits, we'll start that project. And then there's 2 more that I put in there. I just don't have time to do all of them.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But yeah, just took some guidance around the framework that you put together.
Sure,
I think that's a
sure.
key.
I will send that to you.
The delta between learning it, being exposed to it, and then what you do with it. So
yep.
And
if it's interesting, if you look at the material, if it's interesting, I can give you more details in a meeting like this as well.
Okay, yeah, or maybe we have you share that with the TAC, right? That could be.
Can we get Alex's phone number, please? I mean, email. I'm sorry.
I can put down my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, or your email in the chat, or both would be great. That sounds really, and something probably, we should feature or mention, or an aspect that should be covered. How do you go from exposure to application?
Yep. And I'm finding it takes a long time. I mean, I'm spending a lot of time teaching a lot of simple things. And, there's a lot of students stay in a learning mode. And what I'm noticing is they're not getting into a producing mode.
That's a great way to say it too. Learning mode to producing mode. No, that's great.
Okay, so I received the link and then I posted it. We're now at the top of the hour. This was a very informative and interesting discussion. As we promised, we recorded. We're going to post the recording and then we can revisit it. So this was our June 29, 2021 webinar. We thank you very much for coming here today, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.